Hannah didn't go to the training halls. While other cadets prepared for classes or sparring sessions, she found herself drawn to the observation deck again. The view of space helped her think, helped her breathe. She pressed her hand against the cold window and stared at the distant stars. Somewhere out there was Earth. She'd never been there. Most humans hadn't. The homeworld was more myth than reality to her generation. Just another planet in the coalition. But now people were talking about it like it mattered. Like where she came from changed who she was. "You're not training." Jiho's voice came from behind her. "What's the point? Timon has Sarkovan strength. He's faster than me. He's been training for this his whole life." Hannah didn't turn around. "I'm gonna lose either way." Jiho sat down on the bench near the window. He had a datapad with him, the screen glowing softly. "I did something stupid last night." "What?" "I accessed the restricted files. The ones about old Earth." He held up the pad. "I could get expelled for this. But I thought you should see them." Hannah finally looked at him. "Why would you risk that?" "Because everyone's making assumptions about you based on a genetic scan. I wanted to know if those assumptions had any truth to them." Jiho patted the bench beside him. "Come look." She sat down slowly. Jiho turned the pad toward her. The screen showed old footage, grainy and colorless, labeled with dates from over 300 years ago. The video played without sound. Human soldiers moved through jungle terrain. They looked small compared to the aliens they fought against. The aliens were Velthans, tall and armored with natural plating. In a direct fight, a human wouldn't stand a chance. But the humans didn't fight directly. They used the terrain, hiding in trees and thick vegetation. They set traps. They attacked and disappeared before the Velthans could respond. When the aliens pursued, the humans led them in circles for hours, days even. The Velthans grew tired, made mistakes. Then the humans struck again. "This is from the First Contact Wars," Jiho explained. The Velthans thought it would be an easy conquest. Humans had primitive weapons compared to plasma rifles. But watch what happens next. The footage changed. A human soldier was wounded, bleeding heavily from the shoulder. The injury looked fatal. But the soldier kept moving, kept fighting. The Velthan warrior hesitated, confused by this behavior. In that moment of confusion, another human attacked from behind. Jiho scrolled through more files. Every species that fought humans during first contact reported the same things. Humans didn't stop. They didn't surrender even when logic said they should. They could keep going on minimal food and water. They tracked enemies across impossible distances. They formed bonds with each other that made them fight harder, not weaker. "That was 300 years ago," Hannah said quietly. "I'm not a soldier from ancient Earth. Maybe not. But your genetics are." Jiho pulled up another file. This one just text. "This is from a Threkan medical report. They studied captured human soldiers to understand how they worked. Listen to this." He read from the screen. "Subject continues motor function despite blood loss that would incapacitate any coalition species. Recommends psychological evaluation as subject appears to enter altered mental state during combat stress. Subject tracks wounded enemy by scent traces alone. Recommend reclassification of human sensory capabilities." Hannah stared at the words. Something stirred in her chest, a feeling she couldn't name. "There's more," Jiho continued. "Humans have persistence hunting instincts. On Earth, they evolved to chase prey until the prey collapsed from exhaustion. No other predator hunted that way. And there is something called an adrenaline response. When threatened, human bodies flood with chemicals that override pain and increase strength. Other species have panic responses. Humans have a fight response. I've never felt anything like that. Maybe because you've never needed to." Jiho looked at her seriously. "You've spent your whole life trying to fit in, trying not to stand out. But what if you're supposed to be different? What if that's not weakness? Hannah didn't answer. She took the datapad from Jiho and scrolled through more files. There were psychological reports, combat analyses, even cultural studies. The coalition researchers had tried to understand what made humans dangerous. One phrase appeared repeatedly in different reports. Humans do not recognize reasonable limits to physical exertion. Another report stated, human pack bonding behavior overrides individual survival instinct. Subject will sacrifice self to protect bonded individuals. And another, human pain tolerance exceeds medical models. Subjects continue complex tasks, despite injuries classified as debilitating. Hannah felt something shift inside her as she read. It was like finding a language she didn't know she could speak. These reports weren't describing monsters. They were describing survivors. People who adapted, who endured, who refused to give up even when giving up made sense. She closed the datapad and stood up. I need to be alone for a while. Jiho nodded. Keep the pad. There's more on there if you want to read it. He hesitated, then added, Hannah, don't try to be what they expect. Just be what you are. She left the observation deck and wandered through the academy's corridors. Her mind felt crowded with new information, new possibilities. She found herself in the lower levels, in the maintenance areas where students rarely went. The lighting was dimmer here, the air cooler. Hannah sat against the wall and closed her eyes. She tried to remember her childhood before the orphanage. The memories were foggy. She remembered running. She remembered being good at games where you had to find things, track things. She remembered not understanding why other children got tired so quickly. The orphanage staff had called her odd. Too quiet, too focused. She didn't play like normal children. When they played hide and seek, she always won. She could find anyone by following tiny clues the others missed. A scuff mark on the floor, a scent in the air, the way dust settled on surfaces. They taught her to be normal, to stop noticing so much, to pretend she was like everyone else. Hannah opened her eyes. For the first time in years, she let herself really notice her surroundings. She could smell the difference between the metal in the walls and the metal in the pipes. She could hear the rhythm of footsteps 3 corridors away and know whether they belonged to human or alien based on the pattern. She could feel air currents against her skin and map the room's layout without looking. She'd been suppressing these senses her entire life without realizing it. The next 2 days passed strangely. Hannah stopped avoiding attention. She walked through the academy with her head up, noticing everything. Students whispered when she passed, but she didn't care anymore. She was done being invisible. Myra cornered her in their dorm room. Everyone's talking about the match. Timon's going to destroy you. Are you even worried? No, Hannah said honestly. She wasn't worried. She was curious. Curious about what would happen when she stopped holding back. You should be. He's the champion for a reason. Myra studied her friend. You seem different. Maybe I am. The night before the duel, Hannah couldn't sleep. She lay in her bunk, listening to Myra's breathing and felt her heart beating steady and strong. Tomorrow, everyone would watch her fight. Tomorrow, they would expect her to lose. But something had awakened in her over the past 3 days. Something old and patient and very, very good at surviving. She thought about the humans in those old videos. Small and weak by alien standards. But they'd survived. They'd adapted. They'd won in ways the aliens didn't expect. Hannah smiled in the darkness. Let them underestimate her. Let them think pure human meant pure weak. Tomorrow they would learn what humans were before the galaxy tried to gentle them. Tomorrow she would stop pretending. The medical bay smelled like antiseptic and metal. Hannah sat on the cold examination table, watching the scanner's blue light move across her arm. Around her, other cadets waited in line for their annual genetic screening. Most looked bored. This was routine at the Galactic Coalition Academy, something they did every year without thinking about it. The medical officer was a Threkin named Vex. His species looked like giant manises, with compound eyes that reflected light in strange ways. He barely glanced at most students as they came through. Scan, record, next. Scan, record, next. The process took 30 seconds per cadet. When Hannah's results appeared on his screen, Vex stopped moving. His head tilted at an odd angle, the way Threkins did when confused. He leaned closer to the display, then tapped it twice as if the machine was broken. "Wait here," he said, his voice clicking through the translator. He disappeared into the back office. Hannah waited. Behind her, other cadets whispered complaints about the delay. Her roommate Myra leaned over the partition. "What's taking so long? You're not sick, are you?" "I don't think so," Hannah said quietly. She felt fine. She always felt fine. That was kind of her problem at the academy. She was just fine at everything. Not great, not terrible. Just average. In a school full of warriors with enhanced genetics from a dozen different species, average meant invisible. Vex returned with another officer, an older Threkin with darker chitin plates. They both stared at the screen, then at Hannah, then back at the screen. The older officer made a gesture that Hannah's translator couldn't interpret. "Cadet Hannah," Vex said carefully, "when was the last time your family had genetic testing?" "I don't know. My parents died when I was young. I grew up in a colony orphanage." The two Threkins exchanged looks. The older one touched the console, and the screen went dark. "Your results are being sent to the Commandant's office. You're dismissed. Speak to no one about this screening." Hannah nodded and left, more confused than worried. In the hallway, Mira caught up with her. "What was that about?" "I don't know. They said not to talk about it." Myra rolled her eyes. She was half human, half Ilkari, which gave her purple-tinted skin and reflexes faster than most pure humans. "Everything's a secret with the staff here. They probably just messed up your file." But that evening, Hannah noticed changes. During dinner, Instructor Kyung watched her from across the cafeteria. He was human, or mostly human, one of the few on staff. He'd never paid attention to her before. Now his eyes followed her as she carried her tray to a corner table. The next morning, whispers started. Hannah didn't know how, but information leaked in the academy the way water found cracks. Students she'd never spoken to stared at her in the corridors. A group of Sarkovan cadets, lion-like beings with thick manes, stopped talking when she passed. "I heard it's her," one muttered. "The scanner thing?" "Yeah, pure line or something." Hannah kept walking, her face neutral. She was good at being invisible, at not reacting. Years in the orphanage taught her that skill. Keep your head down. Don't make waves. Survive. Her first class was combat theory. She sat in her usual spot in the middle rows, hoping the attention would fade. But when Instructor Vex entered to give a guest lecture on xenobiology, his eyes found her immediately. He talked about genetic drift, about how species changed when they mixed, about how original traits could be diluted over generations. "Humanity," he said, clicking his mandibles, "is an interesting case. 300 years ago, humans from Earth were considered dangerous. Very dangerous. Their world was classified as a death world by coalition standards. But interbreeding has softened most of those traits. Modern humans are much easier to coexist with." Someone in the back laughed. Humans at the academy were used to being considered weak. Most were hybrids anyway, carrying genes from Volcari or Sarkovan or other species. Pure humans were rare, and they were always smaller, slower, weaker than the competition. Vex continued. "But occasionally, we find throwbacks. Individuals with unusually high percentages of original DNA. These individuals carried traits from before integration. His eyes fixed on Hana. Theoretical traits, of course. We haven't seen a true baseline human in over 2 centuries. The class turned to look at her. Hana felt heat rise in her face. She stared at her desk and didn't move. After class, students crowded around her. Questions came from every direction. Is it true? Are you really pure? What did the scanner say? Hana pushed through them without answering. She needed air. She needed to think. She made it to the observation deck, a quiet area where students went to look at the stars. Through the massive windows, she could see the moon's surface below and the distant points of light that were other worlds. They're going to make your life difficult now. Hana turned. A boy stood near the window, human-looking with gentle features. His name was Jiho. She knew him from engineering classes. He was quiet like her, someone who preferred machines to people. I don't understand what's happening, Hana admitted. Jiho moved closer, keeping his voice low. The Academy's database has old files about Earth, restricted files. Before humans joined the coalition, there was a war. First Contact Wars, they called it. Human soldiers fought against 3 different species before the treaties were signed. We learned that in history class. Humans lost. We didn't lose. We negotiated. There's a difference. Jiho glanced around to make sure they were alone. The aliens were terrified of us. They had better weapons, better ships, better everything. But humans wouldn't stop. Wouldn't surrender. The files talk about human soldiers who kept fighting for days without sleep, who tracked alien warriors across continents, who survived wounds that should have killed them. That's just propaganda. Maybe. But the other species believed it enough to offer humans full integration instead of conquest. They wanted to breed those traits out of us. Jiho looked at her carefully. If your scanner showed pure genetics, that means you have what they tried to erase. Before Hana could respond, the announcement system crackled to life. Cadet Hana, report to Training Arena 1 immediately. Jiho's expression darkened. That's not good. That arena is for formal challenges. Hana's stomach tightened. She knew what this meant. Someone had challenged her to a duel. At the academy, challenges were legal and binding. Refuse, and you were expelled for cowardice. When she reached the arena, a crowd had already gathered. In the center stood Taman, the academy's champion. He was 50-year, tall and powerful, with Sarkovan genes that gave him a warrior's build and a mane of dark hair. He'd never lost a match. He smiled when he saw her, but it wasn't a friendly smile. Cadet Hana, he announced loudly enough for everyone to hear. I challenge you to formal combat. Let's see what pure human blood is really worth. The crowd cheered. Hana stood at the arena's edge, small and quiet and very much alone. She wanted to run. She wanted to disappear. But every eye was on her, and the rules were clear. I accept, she said softly. Taman's smile widened. 3 days. Right here. Don't disappoint us. Hana turned and walked away, ignoring the noise behind her. Her hands were shaking. She'd never wanted this attention. She'd never wanted to be special. But the scanner had marked her as something different, something old, and now there was no going back. 3 days until she faced the champion. 3 days until everyone discovered the truth. She was just an average cadet who'd spent her whole life trying not to be noticed. And that was about to end. The arena was full. Students packed the viewing platforms, their voices creating a constant hum of excitement. Faculty members sat in the upper sections, watching with what looked like clinical interest. Hana spotted Instructor Vex among them, his compound eyes reflecting the arena lights. Hana stood at one entrance, wearing standard training gear and holding a simple steel practice sword. The weapon felt right in her hand, comfortable in a way the Academy's high-tech weapons never had. Across the arena, Tamin emerged from the opposite entrance to roaring applause. He looked magnificent. His Sarkovan genetics gave him a mane of thick dark hair and a build like a natural warrior. He carried a plasma blade that hummed with energy, its edge glowing blue. He raised the weapon above his head, and the crowd cheered louder. Instructor Kyung stood at the arena center. He looked at Hana with an expression she couldn't read, then at Tamin. This is formal combat under Academy rules. First to yield or first to disability loses. Lethal force is prohibited. Medical teams are standing by. He raised his hand. Take positions. Hana walked to her mark. Tamin spun his plasma blade casually, showing off. The weapon left trails of light in the air. Some cadets in the crowd were already laughing, making bets on how quickly this would end. Nothing personal? Tamin called across the arena. I just think we should know if pure human is really special or just an outdated curiosity. Hana didn't respond. She watched him breathe, watched his weight distribution, watched the micro-movements that told her how he'd attack. Her senses felt sharp, focused. Everything around her seemed slightly slowed down. Instructor Kyung dropped his hand. Begin. Tamin exploded forward with Sarkovan speed. He crossed half the arena in 3 strides, his plasma blade coming down in an overhead strike meant to end the fight immediately. The crowd gasped at his aggression. Hana moved. Not away from the strike, but slightly to the side, just enough. The plasma blade cut through the space where she'd been standing. Tamin's momentum carried him past her. She didn't counterattack. She just watched him recover and turn. He attacked again, faster now. A combination of strikes, high and low, testing her defense. Hana's steel sword moved to block each one. The plasma blade should have cut through steel easily, but somehow her angles deflected the strikes rather than meeting them directly. Tamin pressed harder. He was faster than her, stronger than her. His attacks came in waves, relentless and powerful. Hana retreated step by step, blocking, deflecting, but never quite overwhelmed. She's going to lose, someone in the crowd muttered. Look at her, though. She's still standing, not for long. Hana could feel something building inside her. Her breathing stayed calm and steady even as she moved continuously. Her heart rate hadn't increased. This should have been exhausting, but she felt like she could do this for hours. Days, even. Tamin launched another combination, this time adding kicks and shoulder strikes to break her defense. He was using techniques from 3 different combat styles, flowing between them seamlessly. The crowd appreciated his skill. They didn't notice that Hana was reading every move before he made it. Then Tamin made a decision. He was going to end this. He feinted high, dropped low, and swept his blade at her legs in a strike too fast to dodge. Hana didn't dodge. She jumped, just high enough, and Tamin's blade passed under her feet. While she was in the air, while he was overextended from the strike, her practice sword came down and tapped his shoulder. It wasn't a hard hit. It wouldn't have hurt him, but it was a touch in a spot that should have been unreachable during that exchange. The crowd went quiet. Tamin backed away, looking at Hana differently now. She hadn't been retreating because she was overwhelmed. She'd been learning, watching, understanding how he fought. Okay, Tamin said quietly. Now I'm actually trying. He attacked with everything he had. Speed, strength, technique, all of it focused on breaking through her defense. The plasma blade was a blur of blue light. Any normal opponent would have been cut down in seconds. But Hana wasn't normal. She moved like water, like something that couldn't be pinned down. Her blocks were minimal, using the least amount of energy necessary. Her footwork was strange, not following any academy style. It was older, simpler. Movement designed by people who couldn't afford to waste energy because the hunt might last for days. Teenan's blade found an opening. It cut across Hana's shoulder, burning through the training gear and into flesh. The crowd gasped. Hana should have stopped, should have acknowledged the injury. Instead, she didn't even look at it. Blood ran down her arm, staining her sleeve. She kept fighting. "Look at her face," a cadet whispered in the stands. "What about it?" "She doesn't care about the wound." Taman noticed too. The injury should have slowed her down, should have made her favor that side. But Hana's movements didn't change. She simply continued, the pain not registering in her expression. For the first time, Taman felt something he hadn't felt in years of competition. Uncertainty. He attacked harder, faster, trying to force another opening. But Hana was adapting to his patterns. Every exchange taught her more about how he moved. Now she stopped retreating entirely. She pressed forward, her steel sword moving with mechanical efficiency. She wasn't trying fancy techniques or showing off. Every movement had a single purpose, to find an opening. Taman was faster. Taman was stronger. But Hana never slowed down. Her breathing stayed steady. Her expression was blank, almost empty, as if the thinking part of her had stepped aside for something older and simpler. A cadet in the crowd grabbed his friend's arm. "That blood," he whispered. "She's got that blood." "What blood?" "From Earth, from old Earth, before they mixed with us." The fight continued. Minutes passed. 5 minutes. 10. Tynan was breathing hard now. Sweat ran down his face. The Sarkovan enhancements gave him explosive power, but Hana's endurance was something else entirely. She didn't tire. She didn't slow. She just kept coming. Tamin made a mistake. His footwork slipped, just slightly, because his legs were getting tired. It was a tiny error, the kind that wouldn't matter against most opponents. Hana's sword moved. Not fast, but precisely. It flowed around Taman's guard like it knew the path before he did. The steel blade touched his wrist, the touch firm enough to hurt. Taman's plasma blade fell from his hand. Before he could react, before he could recover, Hana's sword was at his throat. Not touching, but close enough that he could feel the steel's coldness against his skin. The arena was completely silent. Hana stood there, her sword steady despite the blood running down her arm. Her pupils were dilated, her breathing still perfectly controlled. She looked at Taman like she was seeing through him, seeing past him to something else. Instructor Kyung stepped forward. Match concluded. Winner, Cadet Hana. The sword lowered. Hana blinked several times, like she was waking up. She looked at the blood on her arm and seemed confused about when that happened. She looked at Taman, and the blank expression faded into something more human. "You fought well," she said quietly. Teenan stared at her. "What are you?" Hana didn't know how to answer that. She bowed formally, the way Academy rules required, and walked toward the exit. The crowd parted for her. Students pressed back against the walls, giving her space. As she passed, she heard the whispers. Did you see her eyes? She didn't even feel that wound. That's not normal. That's not human. No, that's exactly human. Old human. That blood. That's that blood. Hana reached the corridor outside the arena. Her legs felt weak suddenly. The adrenaline that had carried her through the fight was fading, and the pain from her shoulder blazed hot. She leaned against the wall, shaking. Jiho found her there. He had a medical kit and didn't say anything, just started treating the wound. Myra appeared moments later, her eyes wide. How did you do that? Myra asked. How did you beat him? Hana closed her eyes. I don't know. I couldn't lose. Something in me wouldn't let me lose. Behind them, in the arena, The crowd was still talking about what they'd witnessed. About the cadet with pure genetics who defeated the champion. About the way she fought, the way she moved, the way she looked at Timon like he was prey, and she was something that didn't know how to stop hunting. The word spread through the academy like fire through dry grass. That blood. She had that blood. And nobody knew what it meant, except that everything had changed. The medical bay kept Hana overnight for observation. The shoulder wound wasn't serious, but the doctors wanted to monitor her response to treatment. What confused them was how little inflammation the injury showed. The burn from the plasma blade should have caused significant swelling, but her body seemed to be healing faster than normal. Jiho visited her in the morning with food from the cafeteria. "You're famous now," he said, sitting beside her bed. "The footage of your match is on every screen in the academy. Some people are analyzing it frame by frame." "That sounds terrible." Hana picked at the food without much appetite. "It gets worse." Apparently, the footage went beyond the academy. Coalition military channels picked it up. "People from 3 different systems are watching you fight Timon." Jiho hesitated. "They're calling you the first throwback. Like you're proof that old humanity still exists somewhere in the gene pool." Hana set down her fork. "I just wanted to be a normal cadet. I don't think that's an option anymore." He was right. When Hana was finally cleared to leave medical, she found 2 armed guards waiting outside. They wore Coalition security uniforms, not Academy colors. "Cadet Hana," one of them said, "the Commandant requests your presence immediately." They escorted her through the Academy's upper levels to a section she'd never entered before. The corridors here were wider, the materials more expensive. This was where the senior faculty worked, where decisions about the Academy's future were made. The Commandant's office was enormous. One wall was entirely transparent, showing the moon's surface and the stars beyond. The Commandant herself stood by that window, a crystalline being named Cerise, who towered over most species. Light refracted through her body in strange patterns. "Cadet Hana," Cerise said without turning around. Her voice sounded like wind through crystal caves. "Do you know why you're here?" "No, Commandant. Because you represent a problem." Now Cerise turned, her faceted eyes catching the light. "The Coalition has been at peace for 103 years. We achieved this peace through integration, through mixing our species until we shared genetics and cultures. The old ways, the violent ways, were bred out over generations." Hana stood at attention, unsure what response was expected. "Humanity participated in this integration willingly," Cerise continued. "Humans recognized they were too dangerous to remain pure, too aggressive, too persistent, too difficult to coexist with peacefully. The interbreeding programs were meant to soften those traits. And they worked. Modern humans are pleasant, cooperative citizens of the Coalition." "Yes, Commandant. But you're not modern, are you?" Cerise moved closer, studying Hana like a specimen. "Your genetics are from before integration. You carry traits we thought were safely diluted. And now the entire Coalition has seen what those traits look like in combat." The office door opened. Instructor Vex entered, followed by Instructor Kyung and 2 other faculty members Hana didn't recognize. They arranged themselves in a semicircle around her. "We've been debating what to do with you," Cerise said. "Some believe you should be removed from the Academy for your own safety. Others believe you should be studied. And some," she gestured to the group, "believe you represent an opportunity." Instructor Kyung stepped forward. "May I speak freely, Commandant?" "Proceed." "The Coalition has been monitoring the frontier zones for 2 years now. There's activity out there, beyond our borders. Ships disappear. Colonies go silent. The pattern is consistent with an aggressive species, something that doesn't negotiate." Kyung looked at Hana. "If we face another war, We'll need advantages. Humanity's old traits might be one of those advantages. You're suggesting weaponizing her? Vex clicked his mandibles in what might have been disapproval. I'm suggesting we learn from her. Find others like her. Understand what pure-strain humans are capable of before we need them. Cerise raised a crystalline hand for silence. Cadet Hannah, did you know what you were doing during that match? Hannah thought carefully before answering. Not at first, but something happened when the fight started. It was like part of my mind stepped back and something older took over. I could see things I normally don't notice. My body moved without me thinking about it. The combat trance, Kyung said quietly. Old Earth soldiers reported the same thing. An altered state where conscious thought becomes secondary to instinct. Dangerous instinct, another faculty member added. Unstable. Survival instinct, Kyung corrected. There's a difference. Before the debate could continue, alarms blared through the academy. Red lights flashed in the corridors. Cerise moved to her console, her crystalline fingers dancing across the interface. We have a breach, she announced. Unknown vessel, hostile configuration. It penetrated our defense perimeter. The faculty members exchanged glances. The academy was supposed to be secure, protected by coalition military technology. Nothing should have been able to get this close without warning. All students to emergency shelters, Cerise ordered. Faculty to defensive positions. Security teams to the breach point. The guards at the door moved to escort Hannah out. She followed them into the corridor, where students were already running toward designated shelter areas. The alarm continued its piercing wail. Hannah saw Jiho in the crowd. He pushed through to her. What's happening? Breach. Unknown hostiles. She looked at the flow of students heading to safety. Something in her pulled the opposite direction. Where's the armory? Hannah, no. We're supposed to go to the shelters. You go. I need to see what we're facing. She broke away from the guards before they could stop her, moving against the crowd. Jiho cursed and followed. They ran through the academy's corridors toward the armory, where senior cadets were already gathering. Taemin was there, strapping on combat gear. He saw Hannah and tossed her a blade without hesitation. If you fight like you did yesterday, we're gonna need you. More cadets arrived. Mira, her Valkyrie reflexes making her one of the first to respond. Others from their class, mixed species with various combat specializations. Instructor Kyung appeared with a full tactical loadout. Listen carefully, Kyung said, his voice cutting through the chaos. We have intruders on the lower decks. Security drones are offline. They're cutting through bulkheads like paper. Whatever they are, they're extremely dangerous. A holographic display appeared, showing the academy's layout. Red dots marked the intruders' positions. There were 7 of them, moving in coordinated patterns. Our job is to slow them down until coalition forces arrive, Kyung continued. Standard combat protocols. Work in teams. Don't engage alone. But Hannah was studying the display. The intruder's movement pattern was familiar. Not random, not chaotic. They were hunting something. Searching. They're heading toward the medical labs, she said quietly. Kyung looked at the display again. She was right. The pattern showed a search grid converging on the Academy's genetic archives. They're after the samples. Vex's voice came through the CUM system. They're after a sample. Every eye in the armory turned to Hannah. She felt the weight of their stares and understood. Whatever was on that ship had come for her genetics. For proof, the pure humans still existed. Taemin checked his weapon. Then we stopped them from getting it. The cadet response team moved out, Instructor Kyung leading. They headed down into the lower decks, where the Academy's infrastructure tunneled through the moon's rock. The lighting was dimmer here, the corridors narrower. Hannah could smell something wrong in the air. A scent that didn't belong, metallic and organic at the same time. Her senses sharpened, that same focused state from the arena returning. She moved to the front of the group without thinking about it. "Cadet Hannah," Kyung said quietly, "stay in formation. There's something ahead. 30 meters. Moving laterally. How can you possibly know that?" Hannah didn't answer. She just knew. The same way she'd known how Timon would attack. Some part of her was reading environmental clues too subtle for conscious thought to process. They rounded a corner and found the first intruder. It wasn't like any species in the Coalition database. Biomechanical, with a skeletal frame covered in synthetic muscle. Its head was eyeless but tracked their movements perfectly. When it registered their presence, it moved with frightening speed. The cadet team opened fire. Plasma bolts hit the creature but didn't slow it down. It adapted in real time, its synthetic flash hardening to deflect the energy. "Scatter," Kyung ordered. The creature chose its target, Hana. It moved toward her with single-minded focus, ignoring the other cadets. Its limbs extended, becoming blades. Hana didn't run. She watched it come, watched how it moved, and something inside her recognized what this was. A hunter, a predator, something designed to kill, just like the part of her that had never been civilized. When the creature reached her, she was ready. The hunt had begun. The creature's blade limb came at Hannah faster than thought. She moved on instinct, her body responding before her mind could process the threat. The blade passed through the space where she'd been, and her own weapon found a joint in its skeletal frame. The creature recoiled. Its eyeless head tracked her, analyzing. Then it adapted. Its movements changed, becoming unpredictable, harder to read. But Hannah was already moving again, staying just ahead of its reach. Around her, the other cadets engaged more creatures that had appeared from side corridors. Plasma fire lit the darkness. Timon's strength allowed him to hold one at bay, but barely. These things were learning from every attack, adapting faster than the cadets could adjust their tactics. "Fall back," Instructor Kyung ordered. "Defensive formation." But the creatures didn't let them retreat. They pressed forward, coordinated and relentless. One of them got past Timon's guard and struck a cadet from behind. The student went down hard. Hannah saw it happen. Something shifted in her mind. The analytical part shut down completely, and what remained was simple and absolute. Protect the pack. Stop the threat. Hunt. She moved differently now. Not like someone trained in combat styles, but like something that learned to kill before weapons existed. The creature pursuing her made a mistake, overcommitting to an attack. Hana was inside its reach instantly, her blade finding the cluster of synthetic nerves at its core. The creature collapsed. Hannah didn't celebrate. She was already tracking the next one, reading its movement pattern, calculating the most efficient way to end it. She killed it, Myra breathed. How did she kill it? Kyung watched Hannah move through the corridor, hunting the creatures that were hunting them. Because she's thinking like they think. Predator logic. The battle became chaos. More creatures appeared. The cadets were being pushed back toward a dead end. Timing was bleeding from multiple cuts. Jiho was trying to hack into the Academy systems to restore power to the defense drones. Everyone was tired. Everyone except Hana. She moved through the fight with mechanical precision, never wasting energy, never making unnecessary movements. When a creature came at her, she killed it. When one threatened another cadet, she intercepted it. Her breathing stayed controlled. Her focus never wavered. But there were too many. Even Hana couldn't fight 7 of these things alone. The cadets were being overwhelmed. "We need to retreat to a defensible position," Kyung said. He was bleeding too, a deep gash across his ribs. Hana turned to look at the group. Her expression was distant, blank. "No, you retreat. I'll lead them away." "That's suicide," Tim said. "No, it's not." Hannah looked at the creatures advancing toward them. "They're hunting me. My genetics. I'll give them what they want. They'll follow." Before anyone could stop her, Hannah ran. Not towards safety, but deeper into the lower decks. Into the maintenance tunnels where the corridors were narrower, darker, more complex. The creatures immediately changed direction. They abandoned the other cadets and pursued Hannah into the depths of the Academy's infrastructure. Kyung grabbed his comm. "All units. Cadet Hannah has drawn the hostiles into the lower maintenance section. Track her signal and provide support." But in the command center, as faculty members watched the tracking displays, Instructor Vex made a quiet observation. "She's not running from them. Look at her path. She's controlling where they follow. She's hunting them." In the tunnels, Hannah moved through darkness that would have blinded most species. But her eyes adapted. She could see enough. More importantly, she could hear everything. The creature's movements echoed through the metal corridors. She could track each one by sound alone. She led them through flooded sections where water leaked from broken pipes. The creatures slowed in the water, their biomechanical systems struggling with the liquid. Hannah moved through it easily, her body adapting to the cold. She led them through zero-gravity maintenance shafts. The creatures had to use their limbs to grip surfaces. Hannah used momentum and angles, moving faster in weightlessness than she did in normal gravity. She led them through the engine sections, where temperature spikes made the air shimmer with heat. The creature's synthetic components struggled with thermal regulation. Hannah's sweat-based cooling system handled it naturally. Hours passed. The creatures were persistent, but Hannah was more persistent. She wasn't trying to escape them anymore. She was wearing them down, using the environment as a weapon, making them adapt to so many different conditions that their systems couldn't keep up. In the command center, Commandant Ceris watched the tracking data with fascination. How is she still moving? She's been running for 3 hours straight. She's not running, Kyung said quietly. She's persistence hunting. It's what humans did on Earth before weapons. They chased prey until the prey collapsed from exhaustion. No other species hunted that way. But these aren't animals. They're combat machines. And she's treating them like prey anyway. In the tunnels, Hannah had reduced the group from 7 creatures to 3. The others had suffered too much damage from environmental hazards she'd led them through. Now she was ready for the final phase. She led the remaining 3 into the waste recycling section, where toxic fumes from chemical processing created an atmosphere that would kill most species in minutes. The creature's sensors went haywire trying to filter the air. Their movements became erratic. Hannah tied cloth around her face and breathed shallowly. Her body's ability to process toxins was better than the creature's artificial systems. She moved through the fumes like a ghost. The first creature lunged at her blindly. She stepped aside and drove her blade through its core. It fell. The second one tried to adapt, sealing its intake vents. But that meant it couldn't cool its systems. It overheated and slowed down. Hannah ended it efficiently. The last creature was the smartest. It recognized the trap and tried to retreat. But Hannah had been tracking it for hours. She knew how it moved, how it thought. She cut off its escape route and drove it into a corner. When it turned to fight, she was already inside its reach. Her blade found its core. The creature collapsed. Hannah stood in the toxic fumes, breathing hard now, covered in blood and chemical residue. The blankness faded from her expression. She looked at the destroyed creatures and felt sick. Not from the toxins, but from what she'd done. What she'd become to do it. Coalition security forces found her there 20 minutes later. They arrived in full hazard suits, expecting to find a cadet in need of rescue. Instead, they found Hana sitting calmly among the remains of the intruders, waiting. The medical team couldn't understand how she'd survived the exposure. The levels of toxins in the air should have killed her in minutes. But her blood work showed normal toxin processing, just faster than they'd ever recorded. 3 days later, Hana stood in Commandant Cerese's office again. This time, representatives from the Coalition Military Command were present. Tall, serious beings from multiple species, all watching her with careful interest. "Cadet Hana," one of them said, "we've reviewed the footage of your engagement with the intruders. We've also analyzed your genetic profile. We have a proposal for you." "What kind of proposal?" "We're establishing a new program. Project Earthline. We're searching for others like you, individuals with high percentages of ancestral human genetics. We want to understand what you're capable of. We want to preserve what humanity was." "Why?" The military representative gestured to a display. It showed star maps with sections marked in red. "Because we believe the intruders were scouts. They came from beyond our frontier. Something out there is hostile, aggressive, and very dangerous. We need every advantage we can find." Cerese spoke up. "This is voluntary, Cadet Hana. You can refuse and continue your normal academy education. But we believe you represent something the Coalition may need. The traits your species evolved on Earth, the traits we've spent 3 centuries trying to breed out. We need to understand them again." Hana looked at the star maps. She thought about the creatures she'd hunted through the tunnels. She thought about that feeling of clarity, of purpose, when the civilized part of her stepped aside. "If I do this, will you find others? People like me?" "We'll try, and you'll help them understand what they are. Not make them feel like mistakes?" "That's part of the program's purpose. Yes." Hana nodded slowly. "Then I accept." The academy held a memorial service a week later. The student who'd been struck down during the initial engagement had survived, but needed extensive medical care. The ceremony honored the cadets who'd fought, especially those who'd been injured protecting their peers. Hana stood with her unit. Taming was beside her, his arm in a regeneration sleeve. Mira had a bandage across her forehead. Gio had escaped physical injury, but looked exhausted. When the ceremony ended, Teeman stopped Hana. "I wanted to say something." "What?" "I challenged you because I thought pure human meant weak. Outdated. I was wrong." He looked at her seriously. "You're not outdated. You're what humans were before we forgot what it meant to survive." "I'm not sure that's a compliment." "It is. The galaxy made us soft because they were afraid of us. But maybe being soft isn't always good. Maybe sometimes we need to remember what our ancestors were." Over the following months, Project Earthline found 6 others with high ancestral genetics. They came from different worlds, different,